Hi everybody, it's Mr. Boll here. This is our Year 5 history. This is Impact of War Lesson 5. Brilliant work that you've sent me so far on the first 4 lessons. So let's keep that standard up. Well done. In this lesson, we're looking at children in World War II. And in future lessons, we're going to compare how the impact of war in World War I and World War II, what effect it had on children. So in this lesson, we're looking at the evacuees, the people who were evacuated in World War II. Here's our first picture. These people are off on a train to go and stay somewhere in the country where it will be safe and they won't get bombed. And actually, they look pretty happy, don't they? They look pretty cheerful. And I want you to contrast them with the people in this picture. Now, these people are off on their going to go on the train as well. And this lady, she's probably not the mum of this boy here. She's checking his label because he had to take with him a label that says who he is. So she's helping in the town or village that they've arrived in. And she's helping to make sure they get booked with the right family in the right place. And you can see this lad's label here as well. But these ones, not very happy, are they? They seem, this boy's very sad and worried, and so's he. So why is the first picture, you seem pretty happy, and the second picture is not looking so good? You just have a call out some answers. Okay, well done. Now here's some of the things you might have noticed. Well, these children are quite a bit younger, so it would obviously be a real shock for them to have to come away from their parents during this period when obviously they're going to be very scared anyway by the war. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, these children, it looks as if they've been sent away with their friends. So they're actually with their school friends. So that would be a lot more fun to go away with people that you already knew. And they're a bit older. Okay, so there might be some reasons why evacuees would be very happy and it might work out fine. Or some reasons why it might be quite a worrying and difficult experience. And that's what we're looking at in today's lesson. Well, why do they have to be evacuated anyway? Well, here's the World War II German bomber that we looked at last week. And they're overhead, as we've discussed before, during the Blitz, dropping bombs. And they definitely would have bombed all of these places. These are the major cities in Britain. Okay, and some of them, as well as being major cities with lots of people living there very close together, they would also have factories and dockyards, so they'd be doing things relating to the war. And so the Germans would want to bomb those areas to reduce Britain's war effort. Now, not on this map, but also heavily bombed were Portsmouth and Southampton down near us here on the coast. And a city that we're going to talk about a little bit more today is Newcastle. And here's London, which we were concentrating a lot on last week. And we also mentioned Coventry last week, which is just in near to Birmingham. Okay, so this is a photograph from the very beginning of the war. And just take a few seconds to have a look and see what you can notice. Okay, so I'm sure you've noticed they're all looking up into the sky. They're a bit worried. Some of them look like they're quite excited. So I think we'd have to guess that overhead there's a fight between a British and a German plane happening, and they're watching it. And it's not a brilliant safe place for children to be. And this is the type of thing that was happening at the beginning of the war before the evacuation. And many people, especially parents, were really worried about their children. People, as you know, were going down into shelters. And this family have got an Anderson shelter, which we talked about last week. And they're going to go down there during an air raid. And they've still got one of their children with them here. At night, the cities would be lit up with searchlights, trying to be able to see the German planes flying overhead, so you could hit them with an anti-aircraft gun, as we discussed a little bit last week. And everybody had to carry a gas mask with them at all times, and they were trained to put them on. And my dad says the whole school could get theirs on in assembly within less than a minute. And this is, I think this little boy's at school, and his teacher's just making sure that he's done his properly. And so life in a city, you had to have a gas mask with you at all time. You might get bombed. searchlights, the shelters, and people said, let's not get the children to be exposed to this bombing, let's get them to a safe place. So the safe places were not the big cities. So if you look at a map of Britain, Cornwall and Devon, Somerset, that area was a good one, and Dorset, a good area for being evacuated to because they weren't receiving a lot of bombing, so that would be safer to go to. Wales, lots of evacuation, not in Cardiff for the big cities, but in the countryside areas. And the one we're going to talk about, which is where my dad went to, is up here in the Lake District. So here's a photo of my dad. So in this photo, he's about 7 or 8, and he's in his back garden, and he's in Newcastle, where there was heavy bombing in the war. So my dad was 8 when the war broke out, and they weren't evacuated straight away, but a bit later, when he was about 9, they were evacuated from Newcastle, which was receiving a lot of bombing. And where he went from Newcastle, you can see on this map, he went across to the Lake District to a town called Penrith. Okay, and he was lucky because he had a fantastic time during his evacuation, and he says that it was a real beautiful countryside area. Here's a photograph that he took of the areas near the town where he would go and play with his friends, and it was much more, you could do this sort of thing a lot more than you could in Newcastle, which is a big city. And this is a photograph from his school magazine of all of his class, because they all went together, the whole lot. And all of his class went together, and their teachers only were able to use the school buildings in the morning because they were borrowing the school buildings from another school. And so in the afternoon, they said, right, we're going to take all these boys out and we'll go hiking in the afternoon into the Lake District in the hills. And my dad loved it. So he, after that, used to go for his holidays to the Lake District for the whole rest of his life, and he remembers it with great affection. So he was lucky. Here's some photos here. Take a minute or two to just jot down on a piece of paper or call out what you can see. Okay, so here's some of the things you probably noticed. So in those days, this wasn't unusual. Everybody's having a bath at the same time. That's because you couldn't spend the money heating up a lot of hot water. That wasn't allowed, so you've got everybody to go in the bath at the same time. And these people are probably being evacuated from a big city that they live in. And when they get to their evacuation house, a lot of people found that they could have a bath more often. And actually, it was good. It was nice. These two lads, they've been evacuated from a city, but they've gone to a farm. So you can see they're helping out. They've got some these pitchforks here. They're going to do something to help out on the place that they've been evacuated to. And these people, they may have just got off the train, and here they are, and they look really happy. But these are the type of pictures that would have appeared in the newspapers. And like we discussed last week, you wouldn't want to put sad pictures in the newspapers. And so these pictures might not give 100% the true picture. Here's a poster that was common at the time. So this little boy's been evacuated, and there's some pictures here of planes on the wall. And this newspaper is saying, thank you, Mrs. Ruggles. We want more like you. So just take a few seconds to think about who do you think Mrs. Ruggles is? Okay, and you might have even been able to see down here or have a little think. She's a lady who's been taken in, this boy, and looking after him. So she's the host family. Sometimes they call them the foster family, who are looking after them. And most of them were nice. They tried their best. But sometimes things could be difficult, which is what we're going to find out in this lesson. But this picture was published for the same reasons that we talked about last week, that you want people, especially parents, to think, oh yeah, if my children are being evacuated, I don't need to worry about them, they're safe. You don't want photos or stuff in the newspaper that's going to make parents really upset and worried. Here's another one. They've gone to live at their new house. They're probably having the people who already live there, they've made friends with them, like having some extra brothers and sisters. This lady's obviously looking after them really nicely, so it's a nice, happy photo. Now, have a choose. You've got A, B, C, or D. You're going to read them. You can pause the video and read them, and then you're going to choose which of these is the explanation why there's so many of these type of photos and posters. Okay, now which one did you choose? This one probably got some truth in it. People did tend to take photographs of children when they were happy, but this is probably the real explanation. The government printed photos of the evacuees looking happy to make sure their mums didn't worry and to make it look as if everything was working properly. Okay, now sometimes it wasn't quite as great as it looks like in those pictures. Here's some examples from children who'd been evacuated. I remember the children in the village didn't like us. Some children shouted, "Go back to London, we don't want you here." They held me down and put snails and frogs in my dress. That'd be pretty horrible. And then this one, the foster mother used to beat us with a leather belt which she kept on a nail by the fireplace. That sounds really awful, doesn't it? Afterwards, my legs were bright red and stinging. I used to run to my bedroom where I hugged the dog. Now, that wasn't illegal in those days, and sometimes even your own parents would give you a slap back in the wartime, but that was obviously, that experience was really horrible. Now, on today's lesson, you're going to meet 18 different evacuees, and you're going to find out about their experience. Some of them are brilliant, like my dad's, and some are not so much. And so you're going to try and get a little bit more realistic picture of what the evacuation was like. And I'm going to show you a table, and I want you to decide whether the experience is up to +3 for the best experiences. That's probably what you would give my dad. Or -3, which is probably what you would give the one we just read where he was getting hit with a belt. Okay, so, and then, but it might be in between. And then you're just going to add a little note for each one. And by the end of it, you should have a good feeling for what the impact of evacuation was like for children in Britain. Okay, so this is an example of one of, you're going to see these on the website. You actually don't need to print them out, so don't worry about your printer, but there's going to be 18 of these. All right, here's one of them then. This is from Eileen. I was the first child to be picked by a host family who seemed very nice. However, they only had room for me and not my brother, so we didn't see each other very often. This made me really sad. Okay, so you're going to consider what's the score we're going to give that, positive down to negative, or is it somewhere in the middle? So that's your first example. And on the cards that I've got for you on the website, it's one I often use for these lessons. And there's actually 32 cards, but for this task, just go up to 18. And if we were at school, we'd probably split them up and you'd have one each in your class, and then you'd be talking to each other and finding out from each other. So we'll do that maybe when we come back to school. But at the moment, I just wanted to look at the first 18 on the list. So this is how you're going to do it. Don't worry about the colours, but just draw some columns like this in your book or on a piece of paper. And you're going to put the person's name. So we're going to do that as an example with Eileen that we've just been looking at. So there's her name, Eileen. Now, I thought it was in the middle, really, because she was happy to be chosen by such a nice family, but then she was sad that she had been split up from her brother. So I'm going to put it right in the middle. And then in this column, this is where you just put down what's the main point. So this is what I've done. It's a nice family, but there's no room for her brother. So you're just going to write one line for each. Okay, so that column, when you make your table, needs to be a bit wider so you can fit in one line of writing. And then you'll have 18 points. And when you're finished, you can have a look and see what you think the overall impression is. Were the evacuees, generally happy, or was it, quite a mixed picture? Okay, and that's what we're going to use for our future lessons when we compare the impact of World War I and World War II and what the impact was on children. Okay, so that's your task for today. Look at those cards, read them, and then fill in a sheet like this one. And then photograph that and send it to me, and I look forward to seeing them. Thanks a lot. All the best. Bye.